tea time. Welcome everybody, Souldin of the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, getting straight to the point, today's tea is, if I've still got in my pocket the packet, a lemon, ginger and manuka honey tea. A tea I've certainly never had before in a failed tea time which I haven't uploaded. That is certainly not something that happened. This is completely the first time that I am having this tea. Believe me. I never fail at getting my tea times right first time. Nope. But anyway, lemon, ginger and manuka honey tea is a welcoming cup of spicy sweet organic bliss. It's also good news. Let's see. Good news for soothing your spirit is the other little thing they've got on it. You infuse it for at least 5 minutes in water, which certainly beats the 15 minutes you're supposed to do for stuff like detox tea. But ginger teas are usually for health benefits, but I'm actually feeling very healthy at the moment. I do actually just like ginger tea generally, not my go-to tea, but hey, I'm just having it because it's a tea I definitely haven't tried before in a tea time that I failed at. Definitely didn't. This is the first time I'm talking about this subject. Yes. Today's subject for a tea time, and I guess I'll quickly just mention before I move on to the subject, I'm thinking of tea times, and I need to think of tea times because these tea times help Rafi take a break from his editing and such. So, if any of you have any suggestions for video game related topics I could cover in a discussion thing, showing my thoughts and opinions on it, and looking into it and such, feel free to suggest. Anyway, finally, onto the topic of the tea time. We wouldn't want it to go on for 30 minutes like a tea time that I never ended up actually uploading because I never recorded a tea time that went over 30 minutes. Certainly did not. Anyway, today's topic is kind of a random one. I've been in a bit of a Pokemon mood lately because of Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure, my interactive Pokemon Yellow playthrough, so I thought I would talk about the Pokemon games, specifically sort of talking about them in order of my least favourite generation to my favourite generation of Pokemon games. Now, I'm only going to include the first 6 generations in this analysis, well, not analysis, but in this discussion, as it were, because I haven't actually completed Gen 7 yet. I think that kind of says a lot about my opinion of Gen 7 in that it's been so long since I've had Pokemon Sun and I've still yet to complete it. It's hardly exactly positive, but after talking with Rafi, he basically said that I shouldn't really judge the game until I've completed it, and I felt, fair enough. He's got a good point. He's got a good enough point. So, yeah, I'm just going to do it from the sort of first 6 generations, and the way I'm ordering them is that I'm basing it off the best version of each generation, in my opinion. Like, for instance, Black and White and Black and White 2, I think Black and White games are better than Black and White 2 games, and Black and White 2 may be lower than some of the other generations, but Black and White is a Gen 5 game, and so my opinion will be only based off the better version here. That will play a key role in one of the listings. Anyway, I want to make this tea time concise. I doubt I'll be able to get into 15 minutes because there's a lot to cover, but I'm going to try. First off, my least favourite of the Pokemon generations, and I will say that I generally like all the Pokemon games, although this would probably be the one I'd probably list as like 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 maybe if I'm feeling happy, and that's Gen 2. Okay, I'm expecting there'd be some hate if I say that to people, because traditionally it seems to be most people's favourite Pokemon generation, Gen 2, Gold and Silver, Crystal. I suppose you could count the remakes in that as well, but I'm not sure how I'd sort that matter out. I never really sort of thought... The remakes generally haven't been better in most cases, though I do feel Heart Gold and Soul Silver were certainly better than Gold and Silver. Anyway, my Gold and Silver and Crystal, Gen 2, to its credit, did introduce a lot of features. I just don't feel that everything was pieced together well enough. Like, I really like the berry mechanic, the apricot mechanic, I really like those things. I love the Pokegear. In fact, I actually prefer the Pokegear in the original Gen 2 games than the remakes and such, because of how there's a bit more of a choice with it in you being limited for how many phone calls you've got. How many people you can have registered to your Pokegear. I like a lot of the Pokemon. Totodile is my favourite star, and I love Dunsparce and Blossom a lot. They gave Zubat, one of my favourite Pokemon, a evolution, They introduced Dark and Steel types. There's a lot of cool things about Gen 2. The problem is the game itself. I'm not a fan of playing the Gen 2 games. The levels of the wild Pokemon and the trainers at certain points are dreadful. It is the worst game in the entire series for grinding. It is so hard to grind because everything's so pathetically weak in it. they did this weird thing where the 5th, 6th, and 7th gym can be tackled in any order, but as a result, the trainers within that wide gap are pathetically easy. Furthermore, with the Kanto region, a real nice idea, they then proceeded to make it so that most of the gym leaders are fairly the same level, which again means there's a lot of sort of trainers which are misleveled in certain areas, sometimes being really weak and sometimes being a lot stronger than you'd expect. And of course, they, the Pokemon, how they set out some of the Pokemon, like Slugma and Houndour and Sneasel and Mischievous and Larvitar, despite them being Johto Pokemon, most of them you can't get them until Kanto, which makes no sense at all. It is so strange. But yeah, generally I'm not a fan of the Gen 2 Pokemon games. A lot of good ideas and features were introduced, but I don't feel they were able to save the core game itself. The pacing of the game was off. And just a lot of sort of small things, how the Pokemon were added into it. Gen 2 to me, out of all the Pokemon games, feels the most less like its own game and more like just an expansion, really. Shame that. But again, like I said, I want to be concise, so I'll move on to the next one, which at my current stage in time, I would put Gen 7 as my next one. But as Rafi has said, I haven't finished it, so I can't judge it yet. So the next one on my list, despite a growing appreciation for it as of late, would be Gen 6. I've come to enjoy Gen 6 more as a result of playing Gen 7, but I can't deny the fact that Gen 6 is flawed. The X and Y games are, in my opinion, the games with the most potential, but they are flawed, from the ground off. As everyone is familiar with, the game has a pacing problem. The first 3 gyms, up to the first 3 gyms, has this wonderful lengthy feel to it, and then you just kind of blink and you're to the end. The game's difficulty is really misbalanced, with not many trainers having a huge amount of Pokemon, and the Champion and Elite Four being the easiest in any of the series so far. I took out Dianthe with a single Carbink. And, Gen 6 was supposed to be challenging for me because my Pokemon natures were terrible. I had a terrible nature on my Diggersby. Absolutely dreadful. There are other problems with Gen 6, like they kind of push aside the newer Pokemon in favour of the Pokemon with Mega Evolutions. They kind of feel ignored as a result. But, there's also a lot of things I do like about Gen 6. They introduced Pokemon to me. A lot of people think it's a bit of a, side feature, and it can make the game too easy. But Pokemon to me, for me, is the best story-implemented gameplay aspect ever. Because the stories are all about how your love and trust of your Pokemon are the reason you beat the heck out of all the other trainers. Pokemon to me makes that a reality. It gives you an in-game explanation as to why you're kicking the heck out of people. Your love and trust for your Pokemon make them stronger. They get critical hits. They survive attacks they shouldn't. And I feel that's a really cool feature and it makes a lot of sense. I also like the whole travelling with your friends. I really like that dynamic. They're not always with you, but I think more so than any other game, it does feel like I'm travelling with a group. And there's a lot of charm to that. I really connected with each of the characters. Even though I can't remember one of the names. I think, Callum's the name of the male trainer. I can remember Tierno, I can remember Sean, I can never remember the other one's name. But I did like the character. But yeah, Lysandre's an amazing villain. Was certainly with his ending, although he was pretty obvious as a villain. The lore and plot of Kalos is amazing, and the region is beautiful. I love the Kalos region. It's just that the way the game's set out doesn't work, and they tend to ignore a lot of the newer Pokemon, which is a shame because I like a lot of the Kalos Pokemon. They also don't exactly have much type distribution for the Kalos Pokemon, which is a little annoying. Diggersby was my only choice for a ground-type Kalos Pokemon. Vivillon was my only choice for a bug-type Kalos Pokemon. Though, to its credit, I love Vivillon. Vivillon was amazing. Not as amazing as Carbink. Carbink's my favourite Kalos Pokemon. Absolutely destroyed people with Carbink. Yeah, there's a lot of potential, I feel, of Kalos. Things I can introduce, which is why I was really hyped for a Z version, because I feel there's so much they could improve upon it. Improve the overall pacing, make the game a bit harder, stuff like that. Maybe introduce sort of I'd say the Mega Evolutions, or by this point it'd be Z moves, maybe, for Kalos Pokemon. But yeah, that didn't come to be. Instead there is Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so bleh. But yeah, and of course, they introduced customizing of trainers. That's so amazing. I love that feature. But yeah, okay, moving on to... and there was, I guess, one last thing. They also had a Pokemon I really wanted to... There's a lot of Pokemon that I really want to use for Kalos-based Pokemon. In fact, I could probably make 3 whole sets. If I got Like, I was actually thinking I'm going to get Pokemon Y and then I'm going to get Pokemon Z, and I'll have, like, these 3 teams, because I wanted to have these teams. I wanted to try out these Pokemon. Of course, Z never came to be. So yeah, moving on. As I said, I want to be a bit more concise, so I said that like 3 times, and I'm pretty sure that's filling up time, sort of like my ramblings here. Next would be Gen 1. Having played through Pokemon Yellow again, it's not as good as I remember it, though I feel that is actually more of a complaint specifically for Yellow version. The Yellow version isn't as good as I remember. Red and Blue doesn't have the flaw that Yellow version had, in that Yellow versions messed up the pacing between Koga and Sabrina for some reason in raising their levels to like level 50. Really strange that. But when I think of Red and Blue, the thing to take into account when you think about these games is thinking about the period in which they were released. I don't compare the Gen 1 games to the later gens in terms of, oh, this doesn't have this feature, this doesn't have this feature. More so in terms of what they did at the time. And, like, I wasn't a huge fan of Fire Red and Leaf Green initially because I didn't feel it improved enough on the originals. I preferred the originals on the basis that I felt they were better for their time and for the system they were on, whereas Fire Red and Leaf Green felt like they could have done more. So of the Gen 1 games, I like the main criticism I'd say is the region. Kanto region is a very boring region, even with Fire Red and Leaf Green sort of like upping it, it's just a generally boring place to go through. That said, the pacing of the world in Red and Blue, specifically here, but in terms of how you navigate the map and all that, is one of the best in my opinion. I really like the sort of movement of it all, the Mount Moon, Viridian Forest, the sequence of places you go to is really good in my opinion. And they don't overuse caves, which I feel like the caves ended up being used quite a bit lately, but like there was like it was actually really tough to train up a lot of my Pokemon because of the lack of caves. But yeah, of course, Kanto has a lot of good Pokemon. I like the sort of trainer designs. Gary makes for a wonderful rival, or as I've been calling him lately, G-Man. And he's a lot more sympathetic and nicer than people tend to attribute. He's rude, but he does have a lot of nicer qualities to him. And it, had a lot of cool, serious plot lines. The Mother Marowak thing that was just tear-jerking as a kid. And I, of course, have a lot of nostalgia to it, back in the day. But I feel the game holds up even without nostalgia. I think, if you're comparing it to the more modern games, of course, it's more flawed. But in terms of compared to its competition at the time, Pokemon Red and Blue, the Gen 1 games still stand up fantastically. And there's a lot of charm in the older feelings, not just out of nostalgia, but in terms of how much simpler it is. Like, it's a lot nicer, the Pokemon movesets, having to be more specific with your TMs, and the Pokemon not learning all these really powerful moves early on. You have to really make use of some of the weaker moves, and I think that's actually pretty cool. And of course, I guess I'll mention some of my favourite Pokemon. Dugtrio is my favourite sort of Gen 1 Pokemon, but of course I'm a big fan of Vaporeon, Zubat line. I really like Star-wise, I ended up going with Bulbasaur, and I had a real attachment to Ivysaur, really think cool design that. Jigglypuff, there's a lot of Pokemon I go through. Having played Nanka's Pokemon Weavers, doing my Nanka's Pokemon Weavers thing, I ended up having a real attachment to the Bellsprout Weeping Bell line. They're a really cool Pokemon, so yeah. Moving on to the next one, that would be Generation 3. I will say here, the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire remakes weren't as good as the initial Generation 3 games. Rafi actually started to suspect that he was being a bit nostalgia blind in terms of how much he likes Emerald. I think it may even be his favourite of the games. But I was actually correcting him in saying that, the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire are kind of poorer remakes of Gen 3. They mixed up some of the pacing which didn't work, like the change of direction of where New Morville is. And so, some of the Pokemon have less, trainers have less Pokemon, particularly like Team Aqua, Team Magma members. But yeah, what I like about Gen 3, at the time it was a really unique region that really stood out to me. I've liked the region less since Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, but at the time, really unique region. It was the first Pokemon game, and until Gen 5, the main one I'd say in terms of, it feels like it's not an expansion, it's its own thing. It's got a much bigger focus on its own Pokemon, its own setting. It's got a disconnect from the other gens, but I feel that's actually to its strength, because it allows it to stand on its own, and it, as I've noted, not feel like just a mere expansion. They introduced Pokemon contests, which I love to absolute bits. Pokemon contests I'm annoyed with every time they're not in a Pokemon game, because I love doing them. Admittedly, I've never gone through the entirety of them. I generally, both times actually, have done Swellow, got all the cool cups, and then you did a little bit of some of the others, Because, of course, to truly do the Pokemon contest, you have to actually set out your movesets for Pokemon contest. But, of course, you're trying to set them out for battles as well. So, a little bit tricky that. But in any case, I really like the Gen 3 games. Got my favourite male trainer design. I love Brendan's design in the original Ruby Sapphire and the Emerald versions. Not a fan of his remake design. And the biggest feature and the biggest reason I like Ruby and Sapphire games, the Gen 3 games, is version differences. With the Team Aqua, Team Magma split, they are the only Pokemon games, in my opinion, where it's actually worth getting both games yourself. Otherwise, you might as well choose a version and stick with it, and if you need some of the Pokemon, just find a friend to trade with, or, find a random person to trade with, which has the opposite version. Ruby and Sapphire, though, I would say they're the only ones I deem worth getting each individually because of the differences in their teams and such. I kind of wish more Pokemon games did that in terms of having it so that the versions differed enough between one another. Now, okay, I am going to try this tea that I've totally never tried before in a failed attempt at covering this very topic, which went on too long. So here's lemon, ginger, and Manuka honey tea. This definitely doesn't taste like something I've had before. Where there's a nice sort of lemony taste. The Manuka honey is a bit of a strange sweet taste. The ginger kicks in after a while. The lemon's more of an initial taste, which tips the tip of your tongue. Overall, pretty nice tea. Yeah, really nice. I wouldn't mind having this on a regular basis. Although I'd say of the teas that I want on a regular basis of health benefits, I'd rather go with detox tea. But in terms of, again, if I'm feeling unwell, this is a great tea to have. Ginger tea is just a superb tea to have when you're not feeling well. I truly do recommend. And, of course, I like lemon, so having lemon and ginger always works pretty well. The Manuka honey, I think, might actually be blending it better together. But otherwise, I don't really taste much of the Manuka honey to it. It seems to be a more subtle factor to it. Okay, that was the lemon, ginger, and Manuka honey tea. I've still got 2 more Pokemon generations to cover. And of course, when I reveal the second one, you'll know what my number 1 is. Then again, those of you familiar with my top 12 favourite video games will know that one of the Pokemon entries are within I think they're my 9th listed game. So my second favourite generation is Gen 4. And I'm going to start by saying this was what I was talking about earlier in regards to one entry being far better than the others. Because I find Diamond and Pearl very charming. I like the region, I like a lot of the new Pokemon they introduced, I like the sort of characters and all that. However, they're very flawed. Like, a lot of the Pokemon they introduced are just evolutions of previous Pokemon. Again, the whole expansion feeling. And you don't actually get them post Pokemon League. Like, Magmar got a new evolution in Magmortar, but you can't catch a Magmar until after you've beaten the Pokemon League. There's a lot of Pokemon like that, so you actually don't get to experience most of the Sinnoh Pokemon. Lots of flaws like that. The pacing's a bit off in that it takes ages to get to the 3rd gym, and stuff. And you go for a huge gap between 2nd and 3rd gym, which is ridiculous. Stuff like that, which is just generally a problem. And overall, it could have been a lot better. Then it did get a lot better, because they then had Platinum version. And Platinum version basically addressed every flaw I had with it. It was like, I'll fix that for you. I'll fix that for you. Don't worry, I'll fix that for you. I'll make this better. For starters, my favourite Pokemon female trainer design is Dawn's, or Picari's if you're in the Japanese. And Platinum just improved it, in my opinion, with the red coat thing. Another thing I think was improved is the region itself, in that they gave it more of a snowy feeling. I'd say the Sinnoh region is actually my favourite region of all the Pokemon games so far. I like the more snowy feel it's got to it, and I feel it helps it stand out more so than any of the others. I like the pacing of it, because they have the 3rd gym being the Ghost Lady, Fatima, I believe? Instead of the 3rd gym being Maylene. So there's a much smoother pacing. Rotom's a lot easier to catch. They've introduced all those evolution Pokemon early, so you could catch Swinub or Sneasel and all that prior to the Pokemon League. As a result of Platinum, Flint no longer has to use a Lopunny, Steelix, and Drifbloom and say, I'm the Fire Elite Four member! That was just so funny. A Steelix using Flamethrower, it's ridiculous. Barry is my favourite Pokemon rival, so that's a huge thing I like. Cyrus is an amazing villain. I really like the character of Cyrus. Giratina is a terrifying boss to go up against, and I think that that sort of overwhelming fear and threatening presence is what you need from a big boss, and I think Giratina really drives that home in terms of its lore and its design. Rowan is my favourite professor. He's such a stern character. I think it was there's this one funny Pokemon video, and I always love Rowan's line in it, and especially like the professors if they were university teachers, and Rowan's like, my favourite colour is red! And he's just going through and marking everyone's test papers as failures. Oh gosh, I love Professor Rowan. I like the companion mechanic in the, you got these moments where you get into tag battles and you got a sort of different companion for a brief moment. I really like those 5 characters. I think they call them, I can't remember, the stab trainers or something. It's because each trainer represents a different stat, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed. Really, this is just a lot I like about the game. I found it very charming with Diamond and Pearl, but I didn't think they were good games. But then Platinum made it so that they were not only amazing, but they were also charming as well still. Of course, there's a lot of Pokemon I like within the region. Chatot, Bidoof, can't forget Bidoof. Finneon, Finneon, one of the most forgettable designers, I love it. And of course, it has my absolute favourite Pokemon of all in here. Kricketune! Love Kricketune, it's a cricket with a mustache. And it's got X-Scissor and Bug Buzz, and it actually has something of a special attack to use Bug Buzz. Not amazing, but decent enough to make it work. I just love Kricketune, it's my favourite Pokemon of all. Yeah, and that's my thoughts on Gen 4. So of course, you obviously know what my favourite Pokemon game is. After all, they were 9th of my favourite video games of all time. Those being Black and White, and my favourite generation is Generation 5. Now I will say I do enjoy Black and White too, particularly in how it's a sequel to Black and White. That said, Black and White are the superior versions in my opinion, and Black and White 2 would be certainly at least below Platinum. And, what do I say about my love for Black and White? Well, as I've said, I've complained about the concept of Pokemon games feeling like expansions, where they just feel like they're add-ons. Because of the way Black and White does things, they have it restricted to just the new Pokemon until the post-Pokemon League. That's so much better in my opinion. That makes everything feel brand new and fresh. Criticism-wise, I'm not a fan of, the lack of contests. Wasn't a fan of that. And I'm not a fan of the region's design itself. It's a bit boring in my opinion. There's some good places, such as the Twist Mountain. But otherwise, not really caring for how it's designed. But I do love the linear progression with it, because I'm not a big fan of, going out of my way exploring things, not knowing which direction I'm supposed to go in. I really like the story to it, because it's an amazing story, questioning things. He makes for an amazing surprise villain. Ends a great and sort of rival throughout. Love the sort of friendship between Charon and Bianca, and I think they're really cool characters. I guess I'd say as my one other negative in regards to the game, not a fan of the trainer designs of Black and White or Black and White 2, except for the female trainer of Black and White 2. I love that design. But not a fan of Black and White's trainer designs. I'd have loved it if they were instead Charon and Bianca's design sort of thing, because Charon and Bianca are such better designed characters in my opinion. Let's see, but back onto the good things, which are there's tons of difficulty. Black and White were difficult, and I love that. They actually gave me a challenge again. And Double Grass, Dark Grass, which had double battles and tougher level Pokemon, it did even more to add challenge. There was the Shuffling Grass, where you could find Ordinos for great experience, or really tough Pokemon, such as Throw and Sork, and, there's a lot of cool Pokemon I love in it. Larvesta, for instance, absolutely adore Larvesta. Let's see, absolutely adore Basculin, a Lipard, Vanillux. I love Vanillux and Garbodor. They hate it a lot, but I love them. Stunfisk as well, Minccino. Because it was focused so much on the newer Pokemon, I got to treasure and appreciate a lot more of them. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. And of course, despite how they had removed bug catchers in favour of clowns for some reason, there were tons of bug types. So many bug types. My favourite type was a plentiful. And yeah, that's why Black and White are, Gen 5 in general is my favourite of the Pokemon games. Primarily because of how much Black and White does, but I also appreciate Black and White 2 in a lot of matters. I do appreciate how it's a sequel and following up on the story, which is a really cool aspect to it. In any case, this was just a general random rambling, and I say the bigger point to make in regards to my random rambling is to ask for your opinions, because this feels like more of a thing to discuss. As a quick recap summary before I end the video, my favourite generations from least favourite to favourite, excluding Gen 7 because I haven't finished it, are Gen 2, Gen 6, Gen 1, Gen 3, Gen 4, and then at the very top, Gen 5. Feel free to share your thoughts below. I'd love to discuss them with you. And I hope you enjoyed this tea time. Cheerio, everyone!